As clinicians, we've spent thousands of hours to earn our license. Those thousands of hours included everything from learning the basics of anatomy and physiology to determining which test, drug, and procedure to use for almost any condition. We learned to treat all sorts of problems, no matter how big or small. But few of us were trained to identify or treat the underlying causes of these diseases in the first place. Using cutting-edge diagnostics and evidence-based treatments, Adapt Functional Medicine Practitioner training will teach you how to get to the root of your patient's health issues and improve them. You will learn exactly what tests to order, which supplements and protocols to use, and how to support your patient along the way. You'll have the opportunity to get your cases reviewed, to move well beyond theory, and learn how to practice functional medicine from day one. Current patient demand for functional medicine clinicians far exceeds the number of trained providers. Start your functional medicine training in the spring of this year. Get on the interest list at kresser.co/PTP. That's kresser.co/PTP. Hey everybody, Chris Kresser here. Welcome to another episode of Revolution Health Radio. This week, I'm excited to be talking with Adam and Vanessa Lambert, founders of Be the Wellness, a collective that offers transformative coaching and retreats to purpose-driven humans. So this is one of my favorite episodes that I've ever recorded, and I think it is so timely. Over the last couple of years, as you all know, we've been locked down and isolated and alienated from our communities, and I think we've suffered tremendously from that and are only now starting to really fully understand the impacts of this. There are many studies that have been published over the past several months documenting the increase in loneliness, anxiety, depression, social isolation, and listing the very real physiological, psychological, emotional, and I would argue even spiritual effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on our health and well-being. And, you know, as human beings, we are hardwired for social connection and community and for that to happen in person. There's no doubt that the conveniences of the digital world have been, extremely beneficial for many of us, myself included. And the digital connectivity that we have really helped us to get through the pandemic in ways that would have been almost impossible without that. So I'm not coming to this from the perspective of a neo-Luddite. And I do think it is still very important to recognize and acknowledge our essential human need for in-person connection. And that's what this show is really about. We also discuss the role of retreat in our lives and how powerful that can be and what a catalyst it can be for transformation and change when you intentionally set aside time for yourself, for your own health and well-being, and to gather with people who share similar values and intentions and ideals, and you have this shared experience in often a wilderness or nature-like setting. That is just one of the most powerful and transformative things that we can do as human beings. And I talk with Adam and Vanessa about my own long history with retreats of various kinds and living at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur for a couple of years. There's an interesting story behind that I share in the episode. And I think, the more connected we become digitally, the more important all of these things are. And that's, of course, especially true in the post-COVID era. So again, this was one of the most fun podcast episodes I've ever recorded, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Adam and Vanessa, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So the irony for me is not lost that we're having this conversation over Zoom.
Right.
And the topic of the conversation is the importance and even increasing importance, I would say, and relevance of and necessity of in-person connection. And also retreat, like this concept of taking time out of your normal routine and schedule to gather together in person as a community. And we're having this conversation on Zoom.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the technology, right? It's like has it not served us so well in the last couple of years? But it's time to break the cycle.
That's right. That's right. And it does sort of, it points to the dichotomy of our current existence, like where we have this technology, it hasn't enabled an incredible flexibility and quality of life for many people. I know, personally, I was able to leave the Bay Area and move to Park City, Utah, and work, essentially with no interruption whatsoever to my
Yeah.
work. I could be in, visiting you guys in Wyoming. I could be in Australia. I could be in South America. And if I wanted to, I probably wouldn't want to be working in all of those amazing places, but if I wanted to, I could be, and it wouldn't matter. And so, of course, I mean, that's amazing. Lots of gratitude and appreciation for that. But there's kind of a flip side or a dark side to all of this digital online connectivity. And I know you two have been exploring this and shining the light on the basic hardwired human need for in-person connection.
Yeah. And one of the things that comes along with, everything that you just described about how amazing this digital world and our, ability to work from anywhere is that also means that we have the ability to work from anywhere, and when we can, we typically do. And so where, in the past where maybe we would just go into a physical office somewhere and then we would return home, there was like a physical separation kind of between your work and personal life that was a little bit easier to maintain. Once you sort of have the digital leash and it's been, extended and it's allowed you to get out into the world and do these things, it becomes really incumbent upon the individual to really be like sort of setting these boundaries and creating this time and space for themselves. And that's something that we've found people have an easier time doing if it's an event, right? So if it's like, I'm going to go somewhere and do this thing where I'm disconnecting, is a great way to get people sort of practicing, because there is, I mean, I don't want to say that it's like an addiction, but there's some sort of neuroses around the digital connection that we have to like actually break frequently in order to escape.
I'll say it's an addiction. I'll go ahead and say, I mean, this is like an area where I've done a ton of research and it's a big focus for me, as you guys know. And I do think it is an addiction, or it certainly meets a lot of the same criteria as many other addictions do. And I think people who've suffered from a fairly extreme relationship with digital technology, we'll talk about it in those terms and experience it in that way. And I totally agree, about the blurring of boundaries that's occurred over time. And, it's the pressure is just pushing it in further and further to the point where, you have a whole segment of the population that's just gleeful and almost giddy about Elon Musk's Neuralink technology, where you won't even have to pick up your phone anymore. It will just like be piped directly into your brain. So you'll never, ever have to miss an email or, an Instagram like of your Instagram post or whatever. But I have like a personal anecdote of this where I saw it happen with my dad. And I remember when I was growing up, my dad, worked in an office, and he would drive home and he would listen to the Dodgers game on the radio. He was he liked baseball, and it was just super relaxing for him. Like listening to a baseball game on the radio is second in terms of pacing only to like watching a baseball game on TV, right? I remember you could just hear, and it was like Vin Scully, and you could just hear like people whistling in the background, and there would be long pauses and just silence. And when he got home, he was like chilled out. It was like that buffer between work and then getting home and seeing his family. And I distinctly remember when he got a cellular phone installed in his car. And I'm using that term not because I'm old, although I am getting older, but because that's what they called it then, right?
Right.
And it was one of those things. It was like a brick. It was like the size of, like, it looked like a something you'd see like someone in the military take out of a briefcase, and it had like a long cord, and it was wired into the car. It wasn't really like a full mobile phone. I think it was connected to the antenna. But what happened is, instead of leaving work and listening to the baseball game on the way home, he would leave work and keep working, right?
Mm-hmm.
He would be on the phone. And I still remember to this day, we'd be like, what's that sound? And then we'd be like, oh, that's dad just idling in the car in the driveway. He's still talking, on the phone, work. And then he'd come in the house and he'd be in a totally different mood than he was when he was listening to the baseball game on the way home. And, that's kind of an older school example, but I think it's emblematic of what's happening to us now, but amplified by 100-fold.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that this is, back to sort of the point of the conversation, is that you have to almost fight for your separation, for your time apart, and to do, not only just to separate from all of that, but to actually then turn the corner and connect with people in real life and have real connection, real meaningful conversation. And the interesting thing that's happened with, the last couple of years is that I think it's ratcheted up the in-person awkwardness people feel. Mm-hmm. And if you're already, a little shy, or you tend to be a bit of an introvert, like this last 2 years has really pushed you into that space. And so there is a deep, deep calling, I think, for all of us to kind of, ratchet ourselves out of those corners and out of those spaces and learn, the techniques of connection again.
Right.
And I think that that's really what Adam and I have been so dedicated to over the last 10 years of running events, which is so crazy to think that we've been doing it for that long, is that, we have to like practice being with each other. And when you do that, the return on investment is so incredible, but it doesn't just always come naturally. And it doesn't always just come without you making an effort, which was what Adam was saying earlier. Like, you have to actually take the time, make the investment, put it on the calendar, and like fight for those days, by hell or high water. I'm going to make this connection with real people happen.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's something I've talked about for a long time in different contexts, like, digital detox. Sundays in our family are screen-free day. And, we like to have people over and, connect in the flesh. And I go on retreats several times a year, or sometimes I have at least one trip a year where I go and just carve out some time for myself. It's a little bit different than the community and connection thing that we're talking about, but actually feels necessary for me to recharge and, even be able to want to do that. But then one of the blessings of my job over the last several years, less so in the last 2 years, of course, but before that, was that I would speak and participate in a lot of different events, often as a speaker, sometimes as a panelist, sometimes as a participant. And sometimes we would see often see the same people or some of the same people at those events. And so you not only are experiencing the connection and sense of community that comes from being with a group of people who share similar values and interests, but you're also then developing relationships over time, with these people that you get to know in this context. And that's a really rich and meaningful experience for human beings. And it really, we talk a lot about the ancestral diet and lifestyle. We talk about, food, like a paleo or primal type of diet, and sleep, getting 8 hours of sleep and sleeping in a dark environment and in a cool space, because that's what our bodies are hardwired for. We talk about physical activity, 10,000 steps a day. But what's often left out of that conversation is that up until very recently, what the ancestral template for human beings was living in close-knit tribal social groups, not in individual nuclear families where we're like really isolated from other people and outside of our own, family, or in some cases just living alone. We can go days without really interacting in a meaningful way with other people. To me, that's one of the biggest aspects of mismatch between our modern world and what our genes and our biology are set up for.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And there was, You probably actually know who this, somebody wrote a book. I think it may have even been called Zoo Humans.
Yeah.
And it, right. And so, and it like, that's just how I think about this is we're so isolated in comparison to what we were doing, 300 years ago, even less in some areas of the world. And then you stack on top of it this sort of forced separation of the pandemic and all of the things that go along with it. And it's really pushed us into this severe isolation, and I think, to what Vanessa was saying, it's like that. I don't even know if I'm sure that we're not even fully aware of just how much of an impact the last 2 years have had on us, right? I mean, we're starting to see some of the stuff in school kids and things that are like, I don't know, it's easier to observe. But I know for me personally, because I tend to be a bit of an introvert. I tend to be a little bit socially awkward. I tend to not be the first person to walk into a room full of people and introduce myself. And I haven't done that, I used to have to force myself into it and then it'd all work out. And I have not done that in a while, and so it's like, what is that triggering in me? Like what sort of weird, neuroses am I developing now around this, and we'll find out because we're about to go to Peru.
We'll find out tomorrow. We'll report back.
Yeah, we'll report back.
Yeah.
No, it's very true. And I think that's the sort of leveling function that a tribal way of living almost enforces, right? Where you naturally will have people in any social group that are more extroverted, and then you'll have others that are more introverted. But in a social group context, that gets leveled out a little bit because, like you said, the introverts are sort of almost required, invited to participate and engage with other people. And, there's not really an option of just completely checking out. Whereas the last 2 years, not only has there been an option for doing that, that's been essentially mandated in some places and even celebrated, like this is what we should be doing. And it's dangerous to go out and connect with other people because other people are virus carriers. And I don't say that with any sense of judgment or of people who are, there are lots of people in my audience who are immunocompromised and, who understandably and appropriately needed to take more precautions, so that this is not a judgment in any way. It's just pointing to the unintended consequences of that kind of isolation. And Adam, you mentioned we don't really know yet what those will be. We actually know a fair amount already, and it's not good. I've seen lots of papers. There's a paper from 2020 called Loneliness and Social Isolation During the COVID-19 Pandemic, which kind of is going through and documenting the increases in anxiety, depression, mental and behavioral disorders, and this is in adults. It's even more pronounced in kids and young adults who really need that feeling of connection and being part of something even more. But, we've got studies showing that loneliness is increasing, suicidal ideation, actual suicide attempts. It's pretty intense when you start reading the literature about this. And so this is one of the reasons behind my desire to do our Adapt Live event this fall at the Snowbird Resort in Utah with your support and collaboration. I'm super excited about that. You guys, I loved working with you so far, and 10 years of experience doing exactly the kind of event that we're going to be doing here. And I, we just share a lot of the same values and ideas about the transformative and healing nature of this kind of event. And, having just watched this go down as a clinician over the past couple of years and see how it's impacting people's mental, emotional, and even spiritual health, I'm really excited to get together with people and just celebrate this incredible life that we get to live in person.
Yeah, it was so fun, in our initial conversation with you, because it was like, I almost feel like if you didn't even speak, we would have understood what you wanted, what you wanted to create. This symbiosis between what we stand for, I think, is so apparent. But I think it's really important for your audience to understand that it takes something for someone like you to put on an event like this. You know, you have a thriving business, several businesses, right? Several arms of what you're creating in the world. And to kind of carve out the niche and broadcast your energy into creating an event, it's no small undertaking. And I think that it's really, really important to just, you know, for your audience to understand the level of commitment you have to really solving, or at least, you know, giving a valiant effort towards solving this displacement we have with each other. And I don't know, I want people out there just to really understand, like, running events of this level and what it takes, the curation and obviously the expense and all of that. It's such a big undertaking. And so, you know, I want to encourage your audience to make it happen. Like, get yourself to this event, because it's so, so important to support the thought leaders and the people in our community that are taking an actual stand, like put your money where your mouth is kind of stand, to bring us together and to give us opportunity to have that meaningful connection that we are so deeply longing for.
It's so important. I've been reflecting a lot lately on the most transformative and healing experiences I've had in my life. And of course, you know, anyone who's been listening to my podcast for a while is familiar with my own personal story and how, you know, I suffered from a extremely debilitating, complex chronic illness that took me basically to the curb. And, you know, I spent 2 years curled up in a ball on the floor, and, you know, really kind of reached a very deep, dark place where I didn't know if I even wanted to go on. And one of the things that brought me through that experience was community, and two of the two things that all of the transformative and healing experiences that I had that helped me get through that period in my life. Number one was community, and number two was nature.
Mm.
Outdoor, some kind of connection with the outdoor space, and almost always they were happening together. So right. I went to the Esalen Institute in Big Sur for a workshop, and then I ended up staying there for 2 years. So
it's not a bad spot.
Yeah, this is kind of a funny story where, like, I thought I was going there for just a weekend seminar, and I got there and I was just absolutely blown away. I mean, anyone who's been to Big Sur in general and Esalen and specifically knows what I'm talking about, right? It's one of the most breathtaking places in the world. So there was just that immediate deep connection to the natural world there, and you know, the ocean slamming, the Pacific Ocean swells, you know, slamming up against these just dramatic cliffs, and you know, sitting in the the natural hot springs on those cliffs, watching whales migrate from Alaska down to, I mean, you couldn't make it up, right? It's right. just this incredibly inspiring place. But more than that, there was a just incredible, inspiring, deeply engaged community of people who were all there to learn more about themselves and to grow and evolve. And being in that shared environment where people have that intention and are doing that in connection with the land and are doing it together was just, you know, for sure one of the most powerful experiences of my life, such that at the end of the 2-day weekend, I was, you know, like looking around for a place to just stay there. And I just, the universe, you know, made it possible. There was someone who had signed on for a 1-year work position who didn't show up. And I was like, I'm available. I'll take that.
I can start now.
I can start now. Yeah. When you need me. So I worked as a gate guard at Esalen. So I was the guy who checked you in, you know, when you came down for your seminar. And so awesome. I worked 4 days a week, one night shift. So I had 3 full days off to just be there on the land or go surfing, you know, down the coast. And, you know, it was really a turning point for me in that whole journey back to health. And so, you know, I've wanted to do something like this event for a long time, because I know deeply in my cells how powerful experiences like that can be. And I saw, when I was at Esalen for 2 years, I saw people every week and weekend come in, and then I saw them as they were leaving, and they looked like different people every time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we've just been so fortunate to witness time and time again with taking groups, all over the world. And it's just absolutely remarkable. And we get asked frequently, it's like, well, what is the thing that somebody's going to get from your experience? And, it's really hard to say what the one thing is, because ultimately it's different for everyone. And it's that container that you just described, the intentional community coming together, frequently somewhat like-minded people anyway, like-minded enough that they all got attracted to that thing. And then that whole thing being held in nature that allows for these experiences to unfold and these changes to happen in people. And you just don't know what it's going to be, and we're going back to Peru, where I'm reminded of, just this time, I think maybe 2018, where we're getting ready to crest or to summit the Salcantay Pass, which is like 15,200 something feet, right? Which, it's a ways up there it's higher than most people have been. And it's a long and arduous journey to get there. And we get to the top, and one of our longtime clients had been all over the world with us. She crests over the top and just bursts into tears. And the words that she said just stuck with me. She said, if I can do this, what can't I do? And for her, that was it. This was like a very physically challenging, she didn't say anything about fear or trepidation about being able to make it or anything, but clearly inside something she was holding on to that she was able to release in that moment. And you just never know, you never know what people are dealing with, and you never know what that real deep, dark demon is that the right container can just release, and that's, and Snowbird's a perfect example of a place that can elicit that. We have the physical challenges of altitude and elevation. We have the beauty of just of Snowbird, of the remarkable place that it is. And then this container of people coming together, in a celebratory fashion, looking to, get back together, get out there, see what they can squeeze out of this experience. And, we're just going to watch them, and this is something that you'll get to see. And you probably experience it at Esalen. Yeah. You just kind of watch the lights come on one by one over the course of the weekend.
Absolutely.
And you're like,
Absolutely.
Here
we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've done.
Go ahead,
Vanessa.
Well, we always laugh because there's always this moment in the retreat where it's like what Adam's saying, like the energy just shifts and everybody has arrived. And you're just like, all right, now we're here, now we're together. And that's always such a special moment, because it's like, everyone kind of comes in like, what are we doing and where are we going? But then you settle in and you kind of harmonize the spirit of the experience. And then all of a sudden you have, I love the term group aura, because it's true. You kind of all merge your energy field together. And just like anything, you're stronger together than separate. And as that aura merges and people, they start to feel the build of the energy, they suddenly realize like, oh, I'm part of something. Like I'm part of something really, really important. And this isn't the Lone Ranger show anymore. Like I actually have a family, a community, people that I can look to my right and my left and feel like I matter. And there's always that moment in the retreat and in the experience where that energy kind of just takes the group, and you're like, this is why we do events. Like this is why we've spent the last decade creating opportunity for that moment. It's just really beautiful.
Yeah, so important. And I'd love to highlight a couple of things about that. Going back to what you said, Adam, this concept of celebration, I think that's underrated. I think as human beings, maybe it's cultural, maybe I think it's even deeper than cultural. It's human. We have an inherent negativity bias as humans, right? And this has been documented by social psychologists and I think evolutionary biologists and anthropologists, where in order to survive in a natural environment, in our ancestral environment, we constantly had to be on the lookout for bad stuff, right? And if we weren't, we didn't survive and pass our genes down. So our descendants are the ones who are like super aware of all the bad things that could happen.
They were not the party people.
No, they were not the ones who were just like, woohoo, yeah, okay, lion just comes up and eats them. They're done. So they were the ones who were constantly scanning the horizon for the predator, or thinking about the bad things that could happen. And that's great in that kind of environment. But there's obviously a downside to that. And what I've often noticed, just like even, for example, in my work with patients, where one of the things I learned early on was the importance of tracking symptom improvement, because what inevitably would happen if we didn't do that was, somebody would come in, they'd have like 120 symptoms. And, after a month of working with them, it would be down to 20, but they would inevitably focus on the 20 that weren't better. Right. And again, this is no judgment. This is, I think, natural. This is part of just our human hardwired, the way our brains work. But I think it's really important to pay attention to and actively celebrate what is great about life, and what is working well, and what is fulfilling and rewarding and meaningful. And one of my intentions behind this retreat is like, hey, the last 2 years have been really effing hard, and on so many different levels, right? For a lot of people, just physically, if they got COVID and had a hard experience being on lockdown, a lot of people have gone through really tough times financially. A lot of people have had challenges with health. Like there's, I'm sure you've seen the statistics on the average weight gain during the pandemic, and, just being at home, it's just a lot harder. I think it's time to have some fun.
Yeah.
I think it's time to like actually actively cultivate pleasure and like create joyful and pleasurable experiences. And that we've got such a puritanical hang up about that in our culture, but that's essential to being human, having that experience of pleasure, the experience of joy, celebrating life, and also and particularly doing that in a community of people who have that same orientation and are there for the same reason. It's so powerful. And I think that's part of what contributes to that group aura that you're talking about, Vanessa.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we long for a tapestry of experience, yet we tend to keep it only in like one part of the color wheel. It's like we know the hedonic treadmill is a thing, right? Like we are novelty seeking beings, yet we don't give ourselves an opportunity to often go and seek these other pieces of novelty. We kind of keep it in the same sect. And you're like, okay, well, we know this is important to us. Like it's part of our innate nature to want to find new experience and create new opportunity for expansion, but we somehow just get pigeonholed into these certain sects of our life. And so I think, we're with you. That's why, even though we've had to literally jump through a million hoops to get our group to Peru tomorrow, we're doing it. Yeah, because you have awesome. To like, at some point you have to just say, I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to jump through the hoops. I'm going to do whatever it does to get us back out there and get us back on that mountain and breathe in that, ancient Andes air and like declare, this is my life and I'm going to live it.
Well, the first step in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey is the call to adventure, right? So yes. This is the call that we're heeding, and it's so important now more than ever, as we've been saying. Is like we can't let this pandemic, as real as it was, as serious as the effects of it were and continue to be, we can't let it get us, like keep us down,
Yeah.
It's like
and define us. Yeah,
exactly. Like we have to rise above it, and that doesn't mean we're we put our heads in the sand and don't pay attention to the things we need to pay attention to, but it means that like we are so much more as human beings than these circumstances of our life, and there's so much more in terms of what's possible in life, and that container of this of a retreat, of stepping outside of our day-to-day life and actually connecting in person in this shared experience of people who also have this intention is something that can lift us out of
Yeah.
the place that we've been stuck.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even if you just think about the fact that you would be showing up to an event where, yourself, Chris, you, Adam, myself, your team, our team, like there are, probably 10 of us at this point working on this project. 10 people who are projecting the energy out to just say, we want people to come and remember how much they love their lives and how beautiful our community is and how cared for they are. Like, even if you just went to an event because that projection existed, it would be a worthwhile endeavor. But with this event, I mean, you're coming to all these amazing teachers and opportunities to learn from each other and hike and eat incredible food. And just like, there's so much wrapped up into it that it's such an opportunity for your community to come home and celebrate each other.
So I want to talk a little bit about what you don't do at your events and what we're not going to do at this event, because I think it's important, like when I was thinking about this event, I mean, originally a couple of years ago when we first started planning this, it was a different thing. It was going to be more of a conference for our professional communities, the ADAPT trained practitioners and the ADAPT health coach folks. And there was going to be, continuing education and, a number of different faculty members from both of the programs presenting. And I love that. I mean, I've been to Paleo FX, I've been to Ancestral Health Symposium, I've been to lots of events like that, and they're really rewarding. I always learn a lot. There's, great chance to connect with people. But over the past couple of years, like after going through the pandemic, it just became really clear to me that that's not what I wanted for this event. I didn't want it to be about more information. I didn't want it to be about continuing education and credits. And I didn't want to be inside in a conference room with no windows, for 8 hours a day, when meanwhile, right outside is one of the most beautiful canyons in the entire world, right outside of the door of the hotel venue. And yeah, I mean, I know that your events and this event that we're planning is about an experience. It's about curating an experience for people. And it's not about, information and kind of learning more facts and being inside a lot of the time. So talk a little bit about just the general way that you approach events and, how that unfolds.
Yeah. So one of the things that, like in my previous life, I worked for the fire department, right? So I was a fireman for 22 years, and that entire thing can be explained by death by PowerPoint, right? Like everything it's directed. There's somebody that's talking and everyone else is listening and then taking action, and that has never worked for me as a way of enjoying anything, and really even learning anything, right? And so when we really first started running retreats, that was like a core ethos. There are no presentations, like we're not going to get up and PowerPoint something and whiteboard this thing for people. And the way that we want to present information and the way that we want to, sort of share what it is that we're up to and the ethos and the things that we think are important is really through conversation and through experience. And so we take people and we go on walks and we intermix the content providers, for lack of a better term, the teachers, the presenters, we intermix them in the social group. And what you find is that, a hike or a walk is a perfect way to do this, right? So you get out, everybody kind of knows what's going on. And if we were to go on a hike, pretty much everyone who knows Chris Kresser we have some idea of what you're up to, right? And so we don't need to hear you present this big, thing of, hey, this is what I think about all of this stuff. Here's the 9 super toxic things to avoid, right?
Right.
But what we could do is somebody could walk up and as you're sharing some aspect of the trail for 1 or 2 minutes, they could ask you a question that's really specific and meaningful to them. And in that 2 minutes, they're going to get more out of the interaction than you would, 3 hours of a presentation. And so conceptually, that's what we try to do. We try to intermix these things. We try to make it about the experience that we're having and the knowledge transfer component of it is a happy accident frequently. It's about the connection, it's about the experience, and then something is going to pass between you that's going to be more important than, you would ever get from reading a book.
Right.
Or
And
listening to that presentation.
maybe not even between them and me, maybe between them and someone else they meet at the event that they had no idea they were going to meet. And it was a completely accidental connection, but that ends up becoming one of the most significant interactions they've ever had in their life. I mean, that's what I saw happen at Esalen so often, all these serendipitous, unpredictable connections and things that would come out of it. So yeah, I think that's exactly, I love that.
We use this term leave room for the magic, because obviously everything's very highly curated. That's something that we've always done and taken a lot of pride around, is really like there's a lot of curation, but you as an attendee don't really realize that. It feels so effortless and so natural that the curation is kind of just the undercurrent that's holding, or like the bedrock of the event. But one of the things that we've always noticed is that if you do that, and within that curation, you leave space with an expectation that there will be something magical that comes into that space, it always arrives. And it's something that I think Adam and I discovered early on in our days. Like, we, for instance, some of our very first events were with your buddy and ours, Mark Sisson, out of Malibu. And, we took the folks out paddle boarding, and we were like, this is going to be awesome. But we always have this container of like, I wonder what the magical thing that's going to happen at this event is. And we take them out, and sure enough, a pod of dolphins comes, and they're swimming with us. They're swimming under our boards. They're rolling over and making direct eye contact with us. I mean, and that was the most magical thing that anyone was going to take out of that experience, was this deep, beautiful connection to nature and to the fact that something that incredible could happen to them. And so I think that's something that we've always been very focused on as a company, is like, yes, there's going to be amazing food, and there's going to be amazing teachers, and you're going to connect with people, but there's going to be something that none of us even knew that makes the thing like, holy cow, that was the magic.
Makes the thing the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can say that unequivocally. That's the story of my life, basically. Actually,
that's your next book.
Yeah. I mean, everything that I sort of had a grand master plan for just didn't happen. And then the most significant moments and changes and transformations were things that were not planned. And, for example, traveling around the world, surfing, and getting sick. I didn't plan that. I definitely did not plan that. And, but it led to, we wouldn't be having this conversation if that hadn't happened. And, going to Esalen for a weekend workshop and then staying there for 2 years, that was definitely not the plan, and it turned out that, a lot of, in order to make that happen, a lot of stuff had to kind of shift and fall away, but I was open to the possibility of that happening. And, even our recent move to Utah wasn't really planned in that, it was like, we'd come out here to ski for a few seasons, and we really liked it, but there, it was not, we weren't thinking, oh, we're going to move there. And then we came out here in the summer and just had a magical experience. And by the end of that time, we had like started to look around for houses and put an offer on the house, and all of a sudden we were moving to Park City. So it was like,
surprise.
I mean, there really is, I think, throughout my whole life, I've tried to cultivate an openness to that kind of magic, because I think there are, so, we live in a culture that is so deeply dedicated to the rational mind, and the rational mind is an amazing power and force and tool that can be used in lots of different positive ways and some not positive ways, but there's a lot more to being human than just the rational mind. And there's a lot more, I think, that's unseen than is seen. And there's a lot more that's not fully understood by the rational mind that is understood. And so the way for me of understanding that is like, not trying to figure it out, but just putting myself in situations where I'm receptive and open to whatever might come from that.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really, I think, good way of putting that, in that it's and there's so many different sort of analogies you could make, but I mean, it's like, I do a lot of strength and conditioning stuff, right? And so you can try to articulate to someone all of the reasons why their squat mechanics are the way that they are, and all of the muscles and joints and angles that are involved that make it one way or the other. Or you can just have them squat, and you're like, okay, it's working. Like, this is how it's supposed to work. And so I think it's really an important point you're making, to just put yourself in the situations, open up your mind and put yourself in the situations and just be receptive to what comes, because it's, and this is really hard for me to do. Like, my rational mind is on overdrive, with the overthinking things so frequently. But I'll tell you, and for anyone who's listening who that might resonate with, who just cannot get out of their own way in thinking their thinking thoughts, is that the reward is so sweet if you can find yourself, find a way to this sort of open, serendipitous, environment. In fact, there's a book. What was that guy's name, Vanessa? Christian Bush, I believe. A guy wrote a book that's called The Serendipity Mindset, or Project, or something. Mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what he talks about. He's just like, look, if your brain works this way, you need to start looking for these serendipitous moments and start and keep a journal, And so this is the kind of stuff that I think is really important. And if you can crack into that, you're going to be a dramatically happier person,
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is such a great conversation, and the greatest thing about it is it will be continuing conversation over the next few months. As it's so fun to plan this event and think about all the different ways we're going to curate this kind of experience and create a context where there is openness and opportunity to this kind of magic. And if there's one word that when I reflect on my life and what I've been passionate about and interested in, and what I've tried to seek in my life, in every different part of my life, it's transformation. And that is what this experience is going to be about. And so we're, the 10 of us just sitting around every day thinking about ways that we can create a context that facilitates transformation. And going back to what you said, Adam, people might say, transformation of what? Like, transform what? And we would say, I don't know.
Yeah,
that depends.
Let's find out. Yeah.
That depends on you. That depends on what needs to be transformed. And for one person, it may just be the pleasure and joy of being in community in one of the most breathtaking and inspiring natural environments with people who like-minded people, and just the pure pleasure of that can be transformative. I think just giving yourself permission and making that a priority and setting that time aside and saying, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to leave my family, my obligations, I'm going to spend the money on this. Giving yourself that gift can in and of itself be a transformative experience. For somebody else, it might be, getting clarity on something that has been holding them back, that they've been wrestling with for years or decades or their entire life. We just don't know, but you can't know unless you put yourself in that environment and see what happens.
Absolutely. It's interesting, as we're conversing, I'm just feeling the energy of the conversation. And it feels so good, right? Just to talk about it. Even just the three of us in, creating our own little group aura right now. Yep. And I challenge the listener to actually feel into that, feel what you are experiencing just out of the conversation. And then imagine what that will feel like when you're actually with, your
times
community.
200.
Yeah, exactly. And just think about that. I mean, it's a magnificent opportunity. And you can even feel it just in us talking about it. So I'm just so excited to actually be together and experience it. It's going to be so amazing.
For sure. So we are really, really excited, as I'm sure you can tell from listening to this, about this event. And the good news is that you will be able to learn more about it and actually even register very soon. So you can go to kresser.co/live event. And, we've got more details there about the event, the dates, what's going to be happening there, what it will cost. And we sent out a save the date for this a few weeks back. Folks who are on my email list will know this because they got the email. And we received just an incredible response. There's so much enthusiasm and excitement about this event. I was skiing today and was riding up the chairlift, and I was talking to this person, and she's like, "Your voice sounds really familiar," because I have my helmet and my goggles on, right? So she can't see my face or just like my mouth or something. She's like, "Are you a Chris Kresser?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And we had a great conversation. She's like, "I am so excited about your event."
Oh,
Awesome. It's like in Snowbird, and here we are in Park City skiing. She's like, "I'm totally coming to your event. Where can I sign up?" So yeah, we have like the interest is huge, but we are limiting spots. We don't want this to be 1,000 people. We won't be able to preserve cultivate the kind of experience that we're going for with that many people. So there'll be limited spots. And so if you think you are interested and you want to come to this, I would definitely encourage you to sign up for the pre-sale list, which you can do when you go to that link, kresser.co/live event. You just put in your email address there, and then you will get early access to registration. So it's a good way of securing your spot. And you'll also get access to the best pricing that we're going to offer for the event, best room options, and other things like that. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling like some tingling and you think you want to go, make sure to get on that pre-sale list, because that's going to be the best chance to make sure that you have a spot. And I do think this is going to sell out pretty quickly. I just intuitively, my gut feel that, and also just having seen the response that we've gotten so far.
Yeah.
The people are ready.
People are ready.
People are ready.
And we're bringing it.
Yeah, we are, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anything else to add before we finish up, Adam, and before you head off to Peru for another transformative event?
I don't think so. I just something that Vanessa said, it's this feeling, if you're excited about what we're talking about right now, and because I even started to feel this thing of like, oh, but should I be excited? Right. And it's a weird thing, but I'm like, oh, is it okay? Are we there yet? Are we at the point in life that we can be excited about something? And I think we are. And so I think we really just need to lean into that. And, everything you said about the pre-sale list from our experience is 100% accurate. Just get on that thing, because if you don't, you may miss out, and that would be unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no obligation or cost to get on the pre-sale list. So
yeah. You're just raising your hand. Yeah.
You're raising your hand. It's an insurance policy. And yeah, it's, the pre-sale will open, I should say, on April 14th, and it will close on April 7th. So that's a Thursday, and then we'll close on April 17th, which is a Sunday. And this podcast will come out probably 10 days before that. So you got a few days, but definitely get on there. And then when we open registration on that Thursday, the 14th, the sooner you sign up, the more chance that you'll grab one of those spots, and that we'll be able to see you in person at Snowbird and over Labor Day this year. I'm so pumped. I cannot wait. So thank you, Adam and Vanessa, for coming on. Especially, I imagine you're busy packing up and getting ready to go to Peru. And I'm
a little
bit jealous, but
we'll bring some magic back for you.
Yeah, bring some magic back. And I've got some pretty good magic going right now here in my world. So
I can feel it.
I can't
Your
complain
aura
too
is
much.
like definitely reflecting that here in Jackson Hole. We're getting the vibe.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and I cannot wait to see you in Utah at the beautiful Snowbird Resort over Labor Day this fall. Kresser.co/live event for more information there, and keep sending your questions in to chriskresser.com/podcast question. We'll see you next time. That's the end of this episode of Revolution Health Radio. If you appreciate the show and want to help me create a healthier and happier world, please head over to iTunes and leave us a review. They really do make a difference. If you'd like to ask a question for me to answer on a future episode, you can do that at chriskresser.com/podcast question. You can also leave a suggestion for someone you'd like me to interview there. If you're on social media, you can follow me at twitter.com/Chris Kresser or facebook.com/Chris Kresser L.A.C. I post a lot of articles and research that I do throughout the week there that never makes it to the blog or podcast, so it's a great way to stay abreast of the latest developments. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you next time.